Many architecture and engineering firms are looking for ways to improve the way that they do business, whether that's how they deliver things to their clients, or how they work and operate in and amongst their team members, or how they handle the financial side of their business and back office operations. Now, the thing is, identifying issues in your business that could be changed either through new action or implementation of new process, or adding new software to handle certain aspects of your business, is only as good as your ability to affect the change, understand its results, and ultimately get everybody on your team on board to following through with that change so you continue to reap the benefit. I personally have worked with a lot of businesses, both in the architecture and engineering world, and professional services businesses, onboarding them to Factor, but also in my prior work as a business analyst and project manager, implementing software for everything from Fortune 500 companies down to small individual consultancies. And I've seen a few things work, and I've seen a lot of things not work. So here are a few tips that I want to share on how I think you can make change, whether software or process or behavior-based, stick with you and your team so that you continue to get value from those changes that you've worked so hard to implement. Now, this first tip is locking down your business essentials. Basically, before you start making any behavioral, operational, process, or software-based changes, let's just make sure that you can do the work that you are contracted to do and invoice for it. Even if it's not the smoothest process, let's just make sure that those two things are happening and happening consistently, even if they're maybe not happening in the most proficient way possible. So make sure the work is getting done, make sure invoices are getting out the door, make sure that you're getting paid for the invoices that you're sending, and then we can start to affect change. So that's the first thing. Let's just make sure that we've got the essentials locked down. The next thing we want to do is prioritize by what is most flexible. Take an average project. Every project consists of scope that needs to be delivered, typically a timeline when that scope needs to be delivered, a budget that it needs to be delivered in, whether that's hours estimates or dollars that you need to stay within. And then finally, there's an execution plan, which is how are you going to actually deliver? What tools are you going to use? How are you going to allocate people's time to do it? And in that cycle, usually there is varying levels of flexibility depending on the type of work that you do, the type of clients that you work with, and even the ways that you write your contracts. So take a look at your business, who you work for, what you do for them, how you write those contracts, and ask yourself, where do I have the most flexibility? Oftentimes, budget is fairly inflexible, or perhaps timeline is the least flexible, but budget can be wiggled a little bit if it means getting things delivered on time. Ultimately, your most flexible area is typically your execution plan, how you're going to allocate team members' time, or what tools you're going to use, or what methods you're going to use to deliver things. Whether you prioritize the few things that you can do in the less flexible areas of your projects, or whether you focus on the many things that you probably can do in terms of how you execute your projects, it's important simply to distinguish those types of changes and understand why you're working on the less flexible or the more flexible first. All right, now let's talk a little bit more about how to affect change. Tip number 3 is be scientific. If you remember anything from grade school about the scientific method or worked in sciences, what I mean is, let's make sure that we have hypotheses about what will happen when we make a change. And from that, we should also be able to establish a baseline and say, how are things operating now? What's measurable in the way that we're currently executing? And how do we think that's going to change? Is it an improvement for our team? Is it an improvement for our client? Is it an improvement to the quality of the work that we're doing? Tip number 4 is involve your team. Don't just make decisions as a principal or head of project management or some other leadership role about what's going to change and when it's going to change without including your team and including them in the understanding of why you would make that change and what you expect to happen. And even things like how long you're going to test that out. And is it a forever thing, or is it something that can be taken back if you try it and it maybe doesn't have the intended effect? And finally, don't try to do too much too fast. This is part of being scientific, right? You only want to change a few measures so that you can easily see whether those had the impact that you expect. So let's take all of these tips and put them together into an example. by making sure that our business is already running. That is, we're getting work done and we're getting invoices out the door. We might pick something about what's most flexible in our business, maybe our resource planning that we want to change. And we want to be scientific about it. So we say, hey, for the next month, we're going to start meeting twice per week instead of once per week to review the resource plan. That way, halfway or toward the end of the week, we can make some necessary changes just based on what's happening in the projects during that week. And we're going to talk through this with the team. We're going to talk about what we hope to change. What we're hoping to change is that fewer people are spending time on projects, fixed fee projects, where we're not actually able to bill for all their time because they're dogpiling onto those projects when really they should stay on the projects that they're assigned to so that we have a more even spend of our budget. And we think that that is a small enough experiment over this time-bound period. And we have an understanding of what we've been overspending in previous months. So we've got a baseline. We can put this plan in motion with the team's backing and start meeting twice per week on resource planning. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We'll go back to once a week, or we'll go to 3 times a week, or we'll head in a different direction. But this is a thing that the team can get behind. They understand why we're doing it. It doesn't affect our typical business operation. Basically, it checks all the boxes that we just talked about. Now, if you're looking for a platform where you can implement some change and work with an onboarding specialist that will understand your business and give you some pointers on where to get started in building efficiency, check out Factor. It's available at factorapp.com, where you can sign up for a free 30-day trial or request a demo and see what your projects in your architecture engineering firm might look like running in software that makes it easy to implement change and create consistency in the way that your team delivers.